Hey friends,
Hey.
Welcome back to After the Sermon. My name is Justin.
I'm Carrie.
I hope that you've been enjoying these videos and it's helped you to study along in the Gospel of John. Over these several months, we are studying through the Gospel of John in a series called Know the King. Just a heads up, we've got a couple more weeks left until we're going to take a break for Advent. And then we'll come back in January and jump back into the Gospel of John. Today is a doozy. Let's all take a deep breath together. Okay, Carrie preached yesterday on the last 51 verses of John 6.
Yes, and I did not talk about this one.
And yeah, we're going to talk about something she didn't touch on in the sermon.
For a reason.
Which is verses 63 through 65, I believe. Yes, 63 through 65. I'm going to read it in the NIV, and then we're going to chat about it. Okay. This is what Jesus says. These are in red. These are red words. The Spirit gives life. This is Jesus talking. The flesh counts for nothing.
Yes.
The words I have spoken to you, they are full of spirit and life. Yet there are some of you who do not believe. And then he goes on in verse 65. This is why I told you, here it comes, that no one can come to me unless the Father has enabled them. No one can come to me unless the Father has enabled them. Now, what's your initial reaction to that? When you hear that verse, what comes to mind right away?
We could have a very big theological conversation of that.
Yeah. So words like predestination.
Calvinism.
Yes. And some of you, that theology might be the theology that you choose. It might be the lens through which you see God and you understand Jesus, and that helps you. It's a comfort to you. My question is, what is Jesus trying to say here? Is Jesus saying something? Maybe this is a question that you have. Is Jesus saying there are some of you that the Father is not going to invite you to the table?
Right.
And there are some of you that he is. There are some of you that he is going to enable you to see Jesus. And there are some of you that he's not. Do you think that's what Jesus is saying?
If you take just that verse with no context, it could be.
Yes.
But that's why it's really important to look at the verses surrounding it. Yeah. You can't look at one thing in isolation.
Yeah. Now, this is interesting. You've been looking at commentaries for this sermon, and you found that a couple of commentaries just skip right over this verse.
Yeah, even commentaries don't really want to touch this verse.
So this is interesting to me because, and I've become very curious, that sometimes in the church, we will look over hard things.
We do.
We will skip over hard things.
In fact, the sermon that I preached yesterday is on one of the hardest passages in the entire Gospels.
Yes.
To preach on, for Jesus too.
Yeah.
And
for the crowd.
For everybody.
Yes.
And it lost Jesus followers because we don't want to hear hard things.
Yes.
And as preachers, sometimes we don't want to preach hard things.
Okay. This is why I said to you, I think the Message translation is the best translation of these verses. Here's how Eugene Peterson translates this section. He says this. He says, the Spirit can make life. Sheer muscle and willpower don't make anything happen. Ooh, that's a shot to our ego. For us doers, right? Yeah. Sheer muscle and willpower don't make anything happen. Every word I've spoken to you is a spirit word, and so it is life-making. But some of you are resisting it, refusing to have any part in this. And this is why I told you earlier that no one is capable of coming to me on his own. You get to me only as a gift from the Father.
Yes. And here is why I will agree with you.
Okay.
That the Message is the best translated version for this verse. Because the word there that the NIV and MRSV, they translate it as enable, it's didomai, which literally means gift.
Gift.
Or give. Or pay. Yes. So
the Father is a gift giver.
He is a gift giver.
But here's the thing about gifts from my Father. The way I receive those gifts is not through my sheer muscle and willpower.
Yes.
It is as a child, opening my hands and receiving them.
Exactly.
And so I think what Jesus is getting at here, and please listen, we don't know exactly. We're 2,000 years removed from this, but here's what I think Jesus is getting at here. This is my understanding of what Jesus is saying. He is inviting us to have a childlike faith.
Yes.
To receive what the Father has for us, to receive what the Father has for us. And I think what Jesus is doing here is asking us, how do you understand your Father?
Yeah.
How do you understand him? Do you understand him as someone who keeps some out and some get to be in? For some of us, that's been our theology.
Yeah.
And when we read this verse, our understanding of our Father shows up. But for me, the way I am learning to understand my Abba Father is that he is a gift giver. And if I will hold my hands out like this, he will enable me to see Jesus.
Absolutely.
He will enable me. So I go to places like Ephesians chapter 1, where it says that before the creation of the world, God took great pleasure in adopting me as his child. This is the kind of God he is. He takes great pleasure in giving us the gift of his son, Jesus, the gift of adoption.
Yeah.
So the question for me in this section is, it's not really Calvinism or not Calvinism. The question is theological. And for me, theology is always, how do I understand the Father?
Yeah. And if we look at this passage in the great context of it,
All of John 6.
It's the continuation of the message that Jesus is trying to convey throughout the whole book. It's not about the works of the flesh.
Yes.
It's not about the water that fills you up. It's not about the bread that fills your stomach. And that's what they were looking for.
Yes.
And Jesus, and again, in Judaism, because they bring it up, they bring up manna. Like, what about all the food that God gave us prior? What about the law? What about the sacrifice? What about the do?
All these things that I can take control
all
of.
these things I can take control of because it doesn't matter, because it's all about what my blood is.
Yeah.
And Jesus is saying, and I think the key to this verse is the flesh counts for nothing.
Yes.
It's not our works.
It's not our works.
We can't work our way to a relationship with Jesus.
So let me remind us of something, that the number one point that John is making in his gospel is to show us that Jesus is God in flesh, walking among us. Jesus is showing us what God is like. What is God like? He is the one that, it's not by our sheer muscle or willpower. It's not by our flesh. It's not by how hard we worked. It's not how religious we are. It's not how good we are. It is all because it's a gift from him. And the gift is Jesus. And the Father wants to give us that gift. Now, here's the warning here.
Yeah.
Some of us are resisting it.
Oh, yeah.
Some of us are refusing it. There are times in my life that I am resistant to the way of Jesus, to the ethics of Jesus, to the teachings of Jesus. And he's inviting me to not resist it, but as a child to receive it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, I've talked in previous messages about how I've had resistance in the past if that's too easy.
Yeah.
It's too easy to just receive the blessings, to receive the presence of Jesus.
Yeah.
And if you look at verse 66, that's how a lot of them did respond.
Yeah. They walked away from him.
They walked away. From that time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him.
Yeah. Here's something practical, a prayer that I pray over my kids all the time. My prayer is, Father, will you reveal yourself to them? Will you show yourself to them so that my kiddos will see you and know you? And then I pray, will you give them a courageous heart to say yes to you? So I believe that God is going to reveal himself to my kids. I believe that is who God is.
I pray almost that exact same prayer. Actually, mine is help them see you.
Help them see you.
Yeah.
And then I want God to give them a courageous, open heart to not resist, not refuse, but to say yes and receive it. And that gift is given to all of us. The gift of Jesus has been extended to all of us, and that's what I believe about God.
And that is the key.
Yes.
That, yes, no one can come to the Father unless the Father has gifted them or enabled them. that gift is available to everybody.
Everyone. All right, I think that's enough.
I think so too.
John 6 is a doozy.
It is a doozy.
And you're going to have more questions. And if you have those questions, so leave them in the comments. Send us a text message. Maybe we could grab a coffee together and chat more about what God is teaching you through the Gospel of John. All right, thanks for hanging out with us. See you next time.
Bye-bye.